Next article I wanted to talk about is about Tony Perkins. It's titled, Tony Perkins Offers Tips on Surviving the Rainbow Onslaught During Pride Month. It's written by Kyle Mentila on rightwingwatch.org. Now, if you don't know who Tony Perkins is, he, I believe, leads the Family Research Council. It's a super conservative group, and Josh Duggar was actually involved in Family Research Council for a long time. I don't know that he still is. I think he left, but he was heavily involved in it at one point. Tony Perkins is the president of the Family Research Council. Let me give you guys a little bit of background on this guy because I've covered him before, but it's been a while. There's another article on Right Wing Watch about him titled, Tony Perkins Says Biden's Agenda is Literally from the Pit of Hell. Let's listen to a couple seconds of this and see what he had to say.
These are challenging times. I am not going to put any kind of spin on it. The policies that are coming out of this administration are literally from the pit of hell.
So it's all claim. He's basically saying that this administration, I guess you could say, like Biden's administration, is endorsed by Satan or not endorsed by God at the very least. He's trying to turn Christians against this administration. He is trying his damnedest to intertwine politics and religion to the best of his ability, and he's succeeding.
Are literally from the pit of hell. Within hours of taking office, forcing you as a taxpayer to be involved in funding abortions, not just here in America, but around.
Not true. Legally, the federal government, according to the Hatch Act, cannot fund that. That is against the law. He's just straight up lying here.
Around the world. The attack on religious freedom.
That one was a little bit cryptic. The attack on religious freedom. What attack on religious freedom? I'm so fucking sick of hearing this. Equality feels like oppression when you're privileged. I understand that. I get it. I get that you feel oppressed because you're so used to supremacy. I understand. But you can't just drop shit like that out of nowhere and not explain.
The attack on religious freedom, the attack on our children with forcing schools, this transgenderism on elementary schools, secondary schools, colleges, and...
The fuck is he even talking about? I have no idea what this guy is even going on about. Needless to say, he's got some pretty monstrous positions. Some pretty fucking disgusting positions. He has a big problem with the LGBT community. And that's the story that we're going to be talking about. Let's read this article by Kyle Mentila and see what it has to say. It's a well-known fact that religious right activists and organizations are vehemently opposed to Pride Month, so it was no surprise to see the Family Research Council dedicate last Wednesday's episode of his weekly Pray, Vote, Stand program to railing against the celebration of LGBTQ equality and offering conservative Christians tips on surviving the rainbow onslaught. How fucking disgusting is this framing, anyways? People just want to be treated as equals. That's all they want. But as I said, when you're used to supremacy, equality feels like oppression. By the way, I didn't come up with that term. I don't know where it came from, but I've heard it before, so don't credit that to me.
Good evening, and welcome to Pray, Vote, Stand. I'm your host, Tony Perkins, President of the Family Research Council. Tonight, surviving the rainbow onslaught. When you can't turn on the television, shop for cereal, or scroll through Facebook without being hit over the head with LGBT pride, how should Christians respond?
Who fucking cares? If you aren't heavily invested or involved in this segment of society in any way, then just keep scrolling. Why does it eat you up so much that the people around you take pride in who they are? Honestly, I can't fucking wrap my head around this.
Thanks to woke corporate America and the most radical administration in history.
Radical administration in history? I would beg to differ. No, there's nothing radical about Biden. I've talked about the difference between radicalism and extremism in the past, like on Twitter and stuff, but here's my opinion on the difference, okay? In my opinion, extremism is when people are willing to take part in violent action to accomplish their goals. You are a radical when you are completely outside of the Overton window of acceptable discourse. It's not necessarily a bad thing. For example, abolitionists in the 1830s, like slave abolitionists, they were considered radicals at the time. That's a radical position to hold. I am a radical in the sense that I don't believe that slavery should exist at all, including for prisoners. Right now, prisoners are used as slave labor. You could view me as a radical because that's outside of the window of acceptable public discourse. Nobody's talking about this shit. We shouldn't have a slavery clause in our laws like we do in the Constitution. I think that's fucking wrong. I would say, getting back to the original point, I don't think that Biden is a radical. In no context could you possibly describe Biden as radical. He is center left on some things, center right on others. Dude is a centrist in a lot of ways. Is he slightly more left on some things than other presidents have been in the past? Yeah, I would say he's a little bit more left. Does not mean he's a radical. I just wanted to set the record straight.
America and the most radical administration in history, there's no escaping the left's forced sexual revolution. What does the Bible say about confronting the culture's rebellion?
Who fucking cares what the Bible says about this? Nobody gives a shit. The Bible was written 6,000 years ago by ass-backwards fucking cave dwellers whose opinion on morality should be completely irrelevant for us today. 6,000 years ago, okay? We live in the year 2021 now. We shouldn't be reading the Bible for morality. If you want to read it for its parables, if you want to believe the bullshit it has to give to you, fine. Leave morality out of it. They didn't know what they were doing 6,000 years ago.
About confronting the culture's rebellion. How did we get to the point where celebrating sex and transgenderism became a 30-day event that rivals Christmas?
Okay, it doesn't rival Christmas by any stretch of the imagination. And one more thing, what was that little bit he said? Let's listen again.
The point where celebrating sex and transgenderism became...
Nobody is celebrating sex. He seems to be misunderstanding what Pride Month is all about. It's a celebration of who you are, not who you're sleeping with. I think Christopher Hitchens said this once, and I thought it was an interesting perspective on it. Hitchens had his problems. He was pretty far right-wing on some things, so I don't know. It's just something to think about. Let me put this in your head and you mull it around for a little while. Hitchens said that homosexuality isn't a form of sex, it's a form of love. You can sleep with guys if you're a dude, and it doesn't necessarily mean that you are gay. But if you want to date guys, you might be gay. It's a relationship thing, not a sex thing. That's the whole thing about Pride. It's about who you are, not who you want to sleep with. That's really the difference. And that's why I believe Pride events should be and could be child-friendly. If you go to a Pride event and you have like all these people out here in risque clothing, maybe even some of them naked, how are the kids who are just coming to realize that they're gay going to cope? How are these kids going to find a space for support? The point here is that Pride can be child safe and not about sex. It can be about relationships and who people are. It's not all about sex, and the fact that he's making it all about sex is kind of disturbing in its own right.
Point where celebrating sex and transgenderism became a 30-day event that rivals Christmas. We have a president who's flying the rainbow flag above the U.S. flag at our embassies.
Good. I'm glad that he's showing support for the LGBT community. I don't see why that's a bad thing. Why is he saying it like it's a bad thing? Is it because it was above the U.S. flag? Is that the problem? If that's the problem, I find it kind of fascinating that I see Trump signs above U.S. flags all the time. I mean, look at this billboard from the Midwest. Jesus, the name above all names. And above the name Jesus is a Trump flag. You're okay with having things above the U.S. flag and things above Jesus, as long as it's the things you like. That's really what it's all about. You just don't like gay pride or LGBTQ pride. And that's why that burns you up so much.
Democratic Congress that thinks the military should salute Pride on base, and a White House that brags almost 14% of its 1,500 appointees are LGBT.
It's good news. That's statistical representation. I'm glad that the LGBTQ community is being represented in society now. It's fucking disgusting and sad where this country came from. But I'm honored to see how far the country has come so far. I want to see this country do better on LGBT issues. But I have to say, we are doing a hell of a lot better now than we were 50 years ago. A hell of a lot better.
You can't blame people for wondering, when did we become identified by our sexual proclivities?
Not proclivities. This is back to the sex versus love thing. It's not about who you want to sleep with. It's about who you want to date. It's about who you want to be in a relationship with, that kind of thing. He's making it out like it's all about who you want to sleep with.
The world is upside down when American pride is something we should apologize for.
Isn't it funny how somebody else tweeted about this recently? Somebody, I think Ron Perlman or something, said something about, isn't it weird how every time you see somebody with an American flag, you think to yourself, wow, that dude must be racist. The reason people apologize for American pride or whatever is because the people who carry around flags like that and are ultra patriotic tend to be right-wing extremists.
When American pride is something we should apologize for, but sexual perversion is the stuff of parades. Just a few decades ago, these activists said all they wanted was recognition.
No, they want recognition and equality. They wanted to be treated as equals. What everybody wants, what everybody deserves, to be treated as an equal. This video that we're watching here is evidence against that. It's evidence that people simply are not treated or at least viewed as equals yet. We still have a lot of work to do when we have people like this in the country.
They wanted was recognition, autonomy, coexistence. Now, a handful of years after Obergefell, it's not...
Obergefell, I believe, is the Supreme Court case that legalized gay marriage.
Obergefell, it's not enough to leave them alone with their choices. They demand validation, affirmation, celebration. Pride is the...
I'm not demanding celebration. If you don't want to come to the Pride Parade or whatever, you don't have to. What is this guy going on about?
Affirmation, celebration. Pride is the new religion. And everyone must bow a knee to their sexual gods or face the left's fiery furnace.
Every time somebody wants to, demonize a movement, they always make it look like it has a religious element to it because they think that's what makes something a cult, when it's not. This guy is just sitting here making it out like LGBT pride or pride parades or whatever is a religion. Every time I talk about Black Lives Matter, I get right-wing extremists coming in saying, it's a religion, dude, it's a religion. They talk about Marx and they're Marxist and Marx. It doesn't matter if it's got religious elements or not. That's irrelevant to whether or not it's a cult. So just drop it. There is nothing about LGBTQ pride that has a religious element to it. You're just trying to tie it into making it look more like a cult. You're trying to make Christian ISIS, Christian extremists, less likely to support it. Sadly, this tactic usually works.
Is it just me, or is it almost like a neon sign that this is called Pride Month? The very thing that when we read throughout Scripture is the downfall of man is pride. It's almost as if, as I prayed a few moments ago about shaking a collective fist in the face of God.
Huh, isn't that funny? So he just said, isn't it weird that we have to apologize for American pride? Now he just said we shouldn't be prideful about anything. It says so in the Bible. So he wants to be prideful about being an American, but if you're going to be prideful about being LGBTQ, that's wrong. This is called the special pleading fallacy. He picks and chooses what he's okay with based on his already existing beliefs. This is just fucking sad.
Making a collective fist in the face of God.
You wonder if the spiritual forces behind Pride Month have tipped their hand.
And there it is. You wonder if the spiritual forces behind Pride Month have tipped their hand, i.e., it's satanic. Satan is standing behind Pride Month. The devil is involved, and he's making it move forward. And it's so obvious at this point that he tipped his hand, and everybody knows it. Everybody knows that Satan is the driving force behind Pride Month. How fucking ridiculous can this get before people see straight through it? Sadly, I don't think that there's a limit. It will keep getting more ridiculous, and people will continue to get sucked into it. That is the nature of the cult-like mindset.